Egypt condemns Israel's actions in Gaza as violations of international law. The Lebanese president calls for Israel's withdrawal from the south. And Trump seeks permanent ceasefire in Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Egypt's representative at the United Nations has condemned Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank, labeling them as collective punishment and violations of international law. She accused Israel of weaponizing hunger, obstructing humanitarian aid, and attempting to forcibly displace Palestinians, thereby undermining the two-state solution. The representative emphasized Israel's obligations as an occupying power to uphold Palestinian rights, including the right to self-determination. She also highlighted Egypt's efforts to facilitate humanitarian assistance to Gaza and called for international support to enforce legal protections for the Palestinians. Egypt has addressed the International Court of Justice in ongoing hearings regarding Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories. The Egyptian representative emphasized Israel's denial of the Palestinian people the right to self-determination and urged UN member states to recognize their rights. Egypt has also called on Israel to guarantee the rights of humanitarian organizations in Gaza and criticized the Knesset for taking decisions to prevent and criminalize UNRWA's work. Despite these challenges, Egypt highlighted that UNRWA continues to provide humanitarian assistance to Palestinian refugees, especially those displaced in tents. Additionally, Egypt reaffirmed that international law grants Palestinian refugees the right of return. Israel has said it decided not to appear in hearings at the International Court of Justice. The Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar has said Israel had submitted its position in writing to the hearings, which he described as a circus. Sa'ar said the court was being politicized while the UN was failing to root out employees of its Palestinian refugee agency UNRWA, who are members of political groups. UN and Palestinian representatives accused Israel of breaking international law by refusing to let aid into the Gaza Strip. Palestinian news agency Wafa has reported that 5 homes were demolished in Idna, a town west of Al-Hadid in the southern West Bank. The Israeli occupation military has carried out an intensified crackdown on Palestinians in the West Bank, arresting scores of people amid the Gaza war. Israel regularly demolishes Palestinian homes and other structures in the occupied territories in what rights groups say is a form of collective punishment. For more analysis, we now move to Head Al-Hamadawi in our newsroom. To you, Head.
Thank you so much, Rihim. Further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Al-Akhbar daily newspaper editor-in-chief, Dr. Osama Saeed. Welcome to Qnews, sir. Now, can you elaborate on Egypt's arguments presented to the International Court of Justice regarding Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories? Mr. Osama, can you hear me?
In fact, this submission presented by Egypt before ICJ represented a steadfast stance of Egypt in supporting the Palestinian cause and supporting the legitimate Palestinian rights, in particularly when the Palestinian people are facing collective genocide by the occupied Israeli forces. Such a submission that included all the facts of the systematic refraining of delivering the humanitarian aid in Gaza, in addition to the non-compliance of Israel, of its responsibility as the occupier, that exposed the Israeli claims and rights related its exercise against humanity by the occupation forces in the Strip. And I think that this submission would have an international resonance in entering as Egypt months in delivering the hints. But unfortunately, the systematic Israeli refraining of the aid that impede the enough humanitarian aid, in addition to by the closure of Israel by the Rafah crossing, which is the only vein to fulfill the needs of the Palestinian people, and the other border that uncontrolled by Israel between Egypt and Gaza.
Mm-hmm. So how does Egypt view the role of the UN member states in recognizing Palestinian rights?
It is clearly that Egypt has a very cemented stance in supporting the Palestinian people's rights. This is a historic and sustainable stance throughout decades. Egypt has managed to mobilize the international partners to support the Palestinian cause, and there is an Arab-Islamic joint action in pursuit to put the international community before the responsibility and acknowledgement of the Palestinian rights. And firstly, the right of life, which is the most highest humanitarian right. Secondly, the Palestinian people's right is to be liberated by the occupation endorsed by the International Convention. The Palestinian people has the right to the established the Palestinian Kosovo that is livable on the lines of 4th of June in 1967, and this right is ignored by the most influential international powers such as the United States. In addition to the sustainable refraining by Israel of such a right, and the right of the Palestinian people should be supported internationally, as well as the establishment of its independent state.
So, how has Egypt characterized Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank in relation to international law?
Certainly, the international law is clearly with this regard. Egypt has designated the Israeli actions in West Bank and Gaza people, that has no army or the strength that confronts such occupation. Even the Israeli claims regarding the Palestinian resistant faction, resistance is a legitimate right against the occupation. And the balance between the two forces by Israel, there is a great difference by the military capabilities. In addition, that Israel continued to kill the civilian people along with the civilian facilities such as schools and the health facilities and utilities that could be providing the life opportunities in the strip. So such a crime is mounted in collective genocide, and I think this categorization is legally accurate and endorsed by all the norms and rules of the international laws.
So, how does Egypt propose to uphold Palestinian rights and these challenges?
Absolutely, the solution isn't an easy matter. Egypt realized this very well. In light of the Israeli rejection and the American position that goes in line with the Israeli stance, this issue would require a regional international endorsement and a very coordinated move by the supported countries. Particularly, there is a real endeavor by the supported the Palestinian right and the two-state solution in reaching some sort of a settlement, such a solution. And there is a summit Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is going to host to support the two-state solution throughout, as well as the two-thirds of the UN state member, and to be translated on reality. Particularly, there is an acknowledgement and realization by the most of the world is the ultimate solution of the conflict, and only and sole one that would eradicate such suffering and a conflict forever.
And sir, that was from Cairo. That was our guest today from Al Akhbar Daily newspaper editor-in-chief, Dr. Usama Saeed. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News. And moving on to met today with the Israeli negotiation team in Cairo, Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs. These meetings continue the intensive efforts by Egypt and Qatar to restore calm in Gaza. The talks are part of broader regional diplomatic initiatives aimed at easing tensions and finding a sustainable solution to the ongoing conflict. With Egypt playing a pivotal role in mediating peace, these discussions could pave the way for de-escalation and improved stability in Gaza. And now we go back to Riham Morsi in our studio to resume our news bulletin. Back to you, Riham.
Thank you so much, Heather, for that. We move to the Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim and Maldives President Mohammed Massoud, who have stressed the importance of resolving the Palestinian cause through peaceful means in accordance with international law and relevant United Nations resolutions. During a joint press conference with Massoud, who is visiting Malaysia, Ibrahim praised the Maldives' recent decision to ban Israeli entry in protest against Israeli violations in Gaza. Maldives President reaffirmed his country's solidarity with Palestine, emphasizing support for Palestinian rights and calling for an independent state based on pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. And two officials expressed their commitment to strengthening Islamic solidarity and upholding Islamic values while discussing global issues, especially conflicts affecting Muslims, and stressing the need for just, sustainable solutions. The World Food Programme announced its food supplies in Gaza have been exhausted due to the continued closure of border crossings. The WFP stressed the urgent need for immediate aid delivery, warning that 1 million people in Gaza now rely entirely on food assistance for survival. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived at the Tel Aviv District Court to testify in his long-running any wrongdoing and has pleaded not guilty. Netanyahu is on trial over a series of corruption charges, which he denies. He appears weekly in a Tel Aviv court to testify in the 2019 indictment in 3 cases involving gifts from millionaire friends and allegedly seeking regulatory favors for media tycoons in return for favorable news coverage. Sudanese Sovereign Council Chairman Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has arrived in Cairo for high-level discussions with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. They emphasized Egypt's commitment to supporting Sudan's reconstruction and stability, highlighting initiatives to unify Sudanese factions and expedite humanitarian aid. They also expressed concern the Gaza Strip and the necessity of safeguarding the Nile water resources. Both parties reaffirmed their dedication to collaborative efforts aimed at restoring peace and bolstering bilateral cooperation. Now we move on to the latest updates in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has reaffirmed the army's full deployment along the northeastern border, emphasizing its role in counter-terrorism, anti-smuggling operations, and maintaining internal security. Aoun called for Israel's complete withdrawal from the remaining southern positions to enable the Lebanese army's full deployment to the border. He also announced the formation of a joint Lebanese-Syrian committee to address unresolved issues, including border demarcation and the status of Syrian refugees, aiming to enhance bilateral cooperation and regional stability. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has confirmed the government's full preparedness to supervise the upcoming municipal and mayoral elections during the launch of the Electoral Operations Room. Salam emphasized that the elections are vital to revitalizing the nation's democratic structure and could serve as a foundation for long-delayed administrative decentralization. He also urged young citizens to actively participate both as voters and candidates, stating that they are the key drivers of political renewal and essential for shaping Lebanon's future direction. A French judicial delegation has arrived in Beirut to advance the investigation into the 2020 port explosion that killed over 200 people, including 3 French nationals. The 2 judges are scheduled to meet Lebanese investigator Tariq Batar and deliver a comprehensive technical report compiled by French experts who assessed the blast site shortly after the incident. This visit aims to enhance cooperation between the French and Lebanese investigations, which have faced significant delays due to political and legal obstacles. Moving on to Europe, a huge power outage hit large parts of Spain and Portugal, paralyzing traffic, grounding flights, trapping people in elevators, and leaving power operators scrambling to restore power to millions of homes and businesses. Some hospitals halted routine work, and 2 countries' governments convened emergency cabinet meetings, with officials actually saying a possible cyber attack could not be ruled out. Outages on such a scale are extremely rare in Europe, and the cause could not immediately be established. We now move on to the latest developments in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said U.S. President Donald Trump wants to see a permanent ceasefire to end Russia's conflict with Ukraine. Leavitt told reporters that Trump was increasingly frustrated with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and both needed to come to the negotiating table to end the war. She noted that Putin had offered a temporary ceasefire, but reiterated that the U.S. president had made it clear that he was seeking a permanent ceasefire.
He is increasingly frustrated with leaders of both countries.
Russia has claimed that it took control of a village in Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region. A Russian statement by the Russian Defense Ministry claimed that its forces captured the village of Kamenka, located about 8 kilometers from Ukraine's border with Russia. The village is situated about 108 kilometers east of the country's second largest city of Kharkiv, located about 30 kilometers from the Russian border, which has been regularly targeted by airstrikes amid the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we... Egypt condemns Israel's actions in Gaza as violation of international law. The Lebanese president calls for Israel's withdrawal from the south. And Trump seeks permanent ceasefire in Russian-Ukrainian conflict. This concludes our news bulletin and our transmission for the day. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Q.